From the Carlson Center in Fairbanks, Alaska, this is the live broadcast of the 2019 Alaska Federation of Natives Convention. The broadcast made possible by major sponsors including Arctic Slope Regional Corporation, Rasmussen Foundation, ConocoPhillips, the Siri Foundation, and ExxonMobil Alaska. Today's broadcast is heard on radio stations across Alaska and the nation, also streaming on the internet at nv1.org.
Live from the Carlson Center in Fairbanks, Alaska for the 53rd Annual Convention of the Alaska Federation of Natives. Good government, Alaskan-driven. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Bob Petersen. Joining me at the table is Tripp Crouse from KNBA and Emily Schwing on loan, helping us out here. We're going to be recapping the morning session, the first session of AFN. A lot of drama this morning, folks.
A lot of drama straight out of the gate. Yeah, thanks, Bob, for the introduction. I don't think any of us were too surprised. We sort of all knew it was coming, but it was like immediately upon opening ceremonies, we started to sort of feel the rumbles of like, oh, and then Tripp, I'll let you sort of explain what happened.
Yeah, so I think that there's a tension in the air before we all got in here. A lot of us were curious about the relationship between AFN and the Dunleavy administration with, the vetoes that happened. There were a large conversation that was happening pre-AFN about the effects that it would have on rural Alaska. And so coming in here, we were just wondering what was going to happen. We had speculation, obviously.
With the topic being good government, Alaskan-driven, it already lends to a lot of curiosity on what it will be happening at this convention and our role within the state of Alaska.
Well, you have to sort of think that theme for this year's AFN is a little bit of a tease when you invite a conservative governor like Mike Dunleavy to the stage. And when he took the stage, you could kind of tell that something was going to happen, only because I'm a reporter, so like it was like all the reporters started to circle. Like we just knew. And then sure enough, like we heard a drum beat, we started to hear those boos, and then people started standing up.
Well, as soon as Governor Dunleavy was introduced, the silence was deafening, as opposed to what was transpiring throughout the rest of the morning. He was greeted with a lot of silence. And then he went right into prepared notes, not looking up, and just saying what he had prepared. And then that's when things got interesting.
So should we play a little tape from the floor sound, like what was going on when the governor started speaking?
Decades for answers. In the last 10 months, DPS has focused on the number. I'm sorry, I can't agree with this.
So what you hear there is Will Mayo, who's a member of AFN's board and leadership, calling on protesters in the audience to stop singing their songs, beating a drum, and they were standing with their backs to the governor with one fist in the air. And then Will Mayo explained himself, so we can maybe play that tape as well.
And before we get to that, so one of the leading causes for this protest, which was supposed to be in silence mostly, was my understanding, and he was standing for the $444 million that was cut. And so the silence was going to be for 4 minutes with their back turned to him.
So we'll listen to when Governor Dunleavy was interrupted and hear from Will Mayo.
Justice should be swift. Families should not have to wait decades for answers. In the last 10 months, DPS is focused on increasing the number. Can I interrupt? Sure. I'm sorry. I can't agree with this. We have different views. We may approach things differently, but we have a man here who is in a seat of authority
And there are ways that we can express our differences. When we gather together and we invite somebody into our house, we do it out of respect, and we do it with kindness in the Native way. I'm going to ask. I respect your right to protest in this way, but I want to ask you, with respect, to please express your views at the voting booth, express your beliefs in a constructive way, and don't come into our house and disrespect our guest.
And so that was co-chair Will Mayo speaking up, bringing a little order back to the convention from the protest that had started. Sam Johns was the person who was coming in and banging the drum, and Emily.
I actually want to interrupt a little
sure.
bit. So there was a little bit of speculation, too, on the floor and before on whether or not AFN had invited Dunleavy or whether Dunleavy had actually asked AFN to speak. And so we actually got confirmation from Nicole Borromeo from AFN saying it's policy for AFN to invite the seated governor to come and speak. And so she says he graciously accepted to come on. So he was invited by AFN, according to Nicole.
And which was to Will Mayo's point. And then, Emily, you had a chance to speak with Sam Johns.
Yeah, so I caught up with Samuel John. He's from Carlson Center, Alaska. His mother's from Arctic Village. So he's in his traditional territory here in Fairbanks. He's from the interior. And I did talk to him about how he felt, why he did this, why he chose to bring his drum out onto the floor and sort of, rally the audience. And then to sing his song. And then also I talked to him a little bit about what he thought about AFN leadership's response. So we can go to that tape of Samuel John reacting.
I feel like right now there's a lot of issues that are coming with the governor's budget cuts.
Such as what? What kind of issues?
Well, putting a lot of homeless people at risk. At first it started with the elders. The elders are, I don't think a lot of people are talking about how much their rent has gone up. A lot of elders are actually becoming homeless right now, and that's real. It's a real fact right now, and I feel like us inviting him here and having an AFN board member tell us that a better way to do this is to vote is complete BS, because people did vote for him and he lied. They did vote.
How would you respond to AFN leadership? Like, Will Mayo stood up and said, we've invited the governor into our house. Please be respectful.
Will Mayo, the house's infrastructure and land is going to collapse soon if we don't stop ignoring climate change. If we don't stop ignoring the real things that are happening. Yeah, we may be having fun inside the house, but there are real changes that are happening outside of our house that we really need to be aware of. I'm like, the foundation of the house is going to collapse soon. So, but nice house.
Is it the Alaska Native way to be respectful and allow Governor Dunleavy to speak?
Okay. They say it in the agenda, the AFN agenda. We adapt, right? That was the way. They used to say when we couldn't write, they'd say, touch this pen for this treaty. That's right there. What happened in there is a modern day, touch this pen. But I feel like we're adapting. Just like they said in the AFN agenda, we are adapting and we are speaking out and we are being vocal, and that's what we have a right to do. And more than ever, our elders didn't have a right to do this. They were very afraid to do what we're doing. And now that we have the ability to do it, we're going to do it.
And so that was Sam John, who was expressing his viewpoint and the necessity of having an opposition voice at the moment, while Governor Dunleavy was here, there was kind of an over-under on whether or not Dunleavy would show up in person, or whether he would do as his typical go-to the last several months is just via the internet and a message.
We do know that he took off very shortly after his speech
with his prepared words.
Yeah, jumped on a plane back to Anchorage, and he was out of here. So.
Because after co-chair Will Mayo reset order to the convention, Governor Dunleavy just presented right back to his notes his words, picked up right where he left off, not mentioning or having much interaction with the audience at all. Outside of his prepared words.
And I will say, I mean, it would have been a far worse move for him not to show up. That would have been a very loud statement to AFN. And so for him to come in, I think that was a really good move for him. I think the voting population of Alaska Natives is a very strong contingent, and I think he knows that. And obviously he's got some policies and things that he wants to work through, and he's going to need support from rural Alaska and Alaska Natives.
And when it comes to the role of government, they're trying to enact and help form society and how society behaves with one another. And what that, folks may not always agree with the agenda of what's the government is doing. Tripp, you had a chance to walk around and tell us what you came across.
Well, as I was out and I was recording audio and shooting photos, I stumbled on a couple of women who were standing up silently protesting. One of them had an MMIW with the handprint handkerchief that they were holding up, and also the hand in the air very quietly. So you really had an interesting mix of the drumming and the chanting that happened, and then these people who were silently protesting. So I talked to Ruth Miller, who was standing up silently, and she was talking about how she saw it as being a peaceful protest, and we've got that tape now that we can listen to.
We stood in peaceful protest today to support the recall of Dunleavy from his governorship and to hold him accountable to the violations of Alaska Native rights that he has made every minute since he's been in office. He can stand on stage and talk about his Alaska Native family, and that's fine and dandy, but that does not change the policies that he's promulgated across our state that have disrupted hundreds of thousands of lives, that have harmed our communities, that have harmed our people. We do not forget that.
And so it's really heartening to see that all voices are being accepted and each voice is being heard here. That's something in which we really have a strong belief in, is that communication is key. And we thank you for tuning in and listening to the live coverage of the 2019 Alaska Federation of Natives Convention, Good Government, Alaskan Driven. I am Bob Petersen, and joining me is Tripp Crouse and Emily Schwing. Tripp, as you were going around, the next thing you came across was the sacred space. What was...
Yeah, so, and again, I talked to Ruth Miller, and she was talking about how, we were sort of talking about whether or not the silent protest was the right way to do it, or the drumming and chanting was the important part. And as we're talking about sort of setting the stage and everything, I'm seeing the white cuspec from Amber Webb up on the stage, and so, you know, that's a nice reminder of, like, a big policy and issue that's sort of resonating throughout AFN. But one of her points was that the drumming and chanting is sacred for them, and so it creates this space. And for Miller, she says the singing and dancing actually enriches the conversation. So we have that tape now.
Our drumming and our chanting is our prayer, and we are making this a sacred space by standing up for our rights as Alaska Native peoples. And so our drumming and our chanting is not an interruption, it's enriching the sanctity of this space, and it is sharing that we stand in unity as Alaska Native peoples, that we are not here for political reasons. We are here because our families, our friends, and our relatives have been harmed by this man's policies. That doesn't make this partisan or political, that makes it personal.
That makes it personal. What a statement right there. And something in which is at a core of what the Alaska Federation of Natives is. To be able to be standing in our communities, to be seen. Just a very powerful statement from a very powerful and dramatic-filled morning.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's personal too with the budget cuts that we are looking at under the Dunleavy administration. Those are also, they get very personal when you really drill down to a single Alaska Native village, or the impact within a small community of 300 or 400 people. Those impacts are personal and they are felt pretty deeply. As well, when we heard from Samuel Johns, he's talking about the elders and negative impacts on elders is something that's taken very seriously. I do want to say as well that, even though Governor Dunleavy left, there's a table for the Recall Dunleavy effort here and will be here all week. And so this mood and this sort of like tension politically is still going to remain here at AFN throughout the week.
I think there's always a healthy, it's not quite adversarial, but a very healthy interaction of the citizenry and the diverse citizenry who have different policies that are seeking safety for all. And we're just trying to make sure that the Native voice is being heard and being shared and proclaimed out.
Well, we're also hearing from that, like there's a generational gap as well. While older generations may either be fearful of standing up or it wasn't necessarily something that was accepted. Now we're seeing these younger generations and Alaska Native youth really stand up and speak out against issues like climate change and all these other issues that are plaguing them, substance abuse, sexual misconduct, all kinds of things. Domestic violence. And so we are seeing these generations, we're seeing a generational tension as well, where older Alaska Native people are saying, be respectful, and younger generations are saying, no, we're here to speak for our elders because they could not.
And I think, discourse is a really good word, right? Because you don't necessarily have to agree with one side or the other to have a discourse and a dialogue. And really that's what AFN is. So, we're getting more information from political leaders and things like that about the policy and stuff that they're trying to enact. But after that's done, you hear a lot of dialogue from the people in the seats, the delegates. You hear a lot of people talking on the outside, and it creates this nice big conversation. And we may not all agree on everything, and we may not get along, but at least AFN gives us this venue in which we can have that dialogue.
And in which work gets done. And one of the things that was honored this morning, for even though there was this drama that took place, it did not overshadow the rest of the convention. It's something that did not overshadow the rest of the morning, in fact. The next segment that we'll be going to is the award given to Senator Lyman Hoffman from Bethel. It was... Being a Bethel boy, it was really nice to be able to see and have a lot of Bethel representation up on the stage. And so, Tripp, you had a chance to cover a little bit of that.
Not me personally. Our associate producer, Christy Schellenberger, actually got to talk to Lyman Hoffman a little bit. And, to go along about that dialogue, he talks about what it takes to be a good citizen. And we can play that tape.
My definition of a good citizen is someone that sees something and wants to make it better. It could be in education, it could be in helping the elderly, it could be in volunteering for a school board. It's contributing time because you think you have a feeling about it that you can make it better.
So that was Senator Lyman Hoffman giving his thoughts on being a good citizen. He received the Citizen of the Year award, and one of the things that he did during his speech, rather than going on the accolades and the work that he has done, he took moments to be able to and mentioned each of the senators and representatives from rural Alaska. That took up a big portion of the time that he had to speak, and it was a really nice homage to what preceded and opens the door for what's possible in the future, and all of which is representation and what that means.
Yeah, I think having a lot of these people who are from rural Alaska and Alaska Native up on the stage, a lot of times we look at elders and youth as more elders and young people sort of having these dialogues, but I think having people up on stage who represent you being an Indigenous person in Alaska or being in rural Alaska, I think that's really motivating, and it gives you a positive feeling to see other people like you up on stage who have worked hard for what they've done and are now in a place where they can actually give back to the community, and it just really makes my heart happy when I see that.
And it's such a dichotomy also, and because we were talking about generational gaps. The next segment that we're going to be talking to, also a Bethelite, but the 2019 Iditarod winner, Pete Kaiser, a young man who was the keynote speaker this morning, and again, recognized for the work that he does, not just in being an Iditarod champion, but what entails that. He was honored and given many gifts out here, one of which was the regalia of the necklace.
Yeah, the chief's necklace.
The chief's necklace for here in the area, which was given the gravitas that it needed.
Yeah, I was actually surprised by that. I mean, we see these necklaces given out as gifts time and again, year after year here at AFN. But this time, Will Mayo stood up and he explained its importance and the symbolism of it. And he actually asked all of the interior leadership, the Athabascan leadership, to approve gifting that necklace, because apparently it's been quite a conversation within, leadership in the region about who they give these chiefs necklaces to. And he said, I'm not going to do this in a lighthearted way. I take this very seriously. And it was a very emotional gift giving. And I was really glad to see that, the importance of this gift was explained to everyone, especially because there is a sort of a coming together of regions there. Pete Kaiser's not from the interior. And so there's a little bit of like cross boundary, I guess you could call it, sort of interaction there. And so that was really special.
Yeah, and set a great tone. And I believe we have a clip of Pete being honored.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk to Pete right after he came off stage and asked him what it was like to receive the Chief's necklace, this Kespuk, the carved ivory. So we have that clip.
This was quite an honor. It was something that was, I wouldn't have been able to turn down, and maybe even a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to speak here today. So it's an honor, and I'm just happy to be here. And it was such a warm welcome, and everybody seemed genuinely excited about what happened last March. So it's a good day.
I love Pete's humility. Like, he's so humble.
Where he said there was genuine excitement. You're the 2019 Iditarod
You're a
champion.
Superstar.
He's
Absolutely.
even like that when you interview him on the Iditarod Trail. I've followed Pete for a long time, I've covered a number of Iditarods, and he is easygoing throughout the race, and he always has a beautiful dog team. And it's great to see an Alaska Native musher at the top of his game again. We used to see a lot of Alaska Native mushers out there in the 60s and the 70s when sprint mushing was super popular here in the state. And then, there were a lot of Alaska Native mushers who were running dog teams in long-distance races, but the sport has just become so expensive and so time-consuming, and the snow machine has sort of replaced dog teams in a way that not everybody needs a team in a village anymore. And so it is really special, and we heard that from the audience. Everybody that stood for him was
during the
so
video.
excited for him.
Yeah, as he was about to take the stage, they showed the video of him winning the Iditarod, and it was as if we were there again. Everyone was getting excited. As he was coming down the victory chute, people started applauding here, and then he was given a standing ovation, a well-deserved standing ovation.
So what did he tell you about his upcoming Iditarod trip?
So we talked a little bit. I kind of wanted to know what training season was like for him. He's already 2 months into the season, getting his dogs ready and running. But yeah, I asked him a little bit about how he's preparing and what's going through his head, coming up to the Iditarod. And we'll play that clip now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're 2 months into training here, so the season's been well underway since August, and it's it's a lot of work. It's every day of the year, and it's all leading towards another run this year in March.
What are the odds of a repeat?
I don't know. It's a tough race. It took me 10 years to win it once, so as long as we prepare the best we can and go out and race as hard as we can, whatever happens after that, it's fine with me. But we'll put our best foot forward and make sure we show up with a good dog team.
So we were talking about showing up with a good dog team
before
we decided to play that clip, and it feels very fitting for this AFN. Last night I had the opportunity to go see the world premiere of Atla. It's a documentary about George Atla, who's from Huslia. It's really special that they showed it here in Fairbanks. Huslia is an interior village. George Atla, he had tuberculosis. He left his village for 9 years. He came back, and because he was gone for so long in his childhood, he didn't learn all of his cultural practices, and he lost his language. And mushing was how he got back into, being part of his community again. And so his saying was always, treat your dogs like they're the best, and then they will be, and always show up with the best dog team. And so this was very fitting for Pete to say that here in this region as well.
It was so wonderful to hear. And folks, you're listening to live coverage of the Alaska Federation of Natives Convention from the Carlson Center in Fairbanks, Alaska. This broadcast is produced by KNBA and brought to you by Native Voice One. We want to thank our listeners at KYUK in Bethel, KSKO in McGrath, KCUK in Cheevac, and KNOM in Nome.